The message on my phone changed everything. It wasn't a text, not a call, but a notification from the security camera app I'd installed months ago, mostly for peace of mind when the kids were home alone. Motion detected at front door. I was at school, in the middle of a particularly dull faculty meeting, when my phone buzzed. A quick glance at the screen, and my breath hitched. It was Tuesday, just past noon. Colton, my husband, was supposed to be at the dealership, closing a big sale, or so he'd said. But there he was, on my screen, opening our front door, and right behind him, a woman. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the polite drone of the principal's voice. Shelby, his new secretary. Her bright, almost too eager smile was unmistakable, even through the grainy feed. She was holding a large insulated bag, the kind you'd use for groceries or perhaps a carefully packed lunch. They exchanged a quick, conspiratorial glance, a shared smirk that sent a chill down my spine far colder than any Boise October wind. Then they stepped inside, and the camera feed went dark, swallowed by the familiar, deceptive quiet of my own home. My name is Monroe Harrison. I'm 38, a high school literature teacher, and for the past 14 years, I believed I was living a perfectly ordinary, perfectly happy suburban life in Boise, Idaho. Colton, my husband, 41, was a sales manager at a local car dealership. We had two amazing kids, Remy, 12, and Ellis, 9. Our house, a cozy split level with a pumpkin-themed wreath on the door, was the kind of place where neighborhood kids gathered after school, and where the smell of apple pie often wafted from the kitchen. I was active in the PTA, volunteered for school events, and prided myself on being the invisible glue that held our little world together. I was the one who remembered birthdays, organized carpools, and ensured there was always a home-cooked meal on the table, even after a long day of teaching Shakespeare to teenagers who mostly just wanted to scroll through TikTok. But in that instant, watching Shelby walk into my house, my perfectly constructed world began to crack. It wasn't just the sight of them. It was the insidious creep of suspicion that had been gnawing at me for weeks. Colton had been different. Distant, yes, but more than that. He'd developed this new habit of working from home during lunch, claiming he needed to catch up on paperwork or make calls in a quieter environment. He'd always been a creature of routine, eating at his desk or grabbing a quick bite with colleagues. These new midday home visits felt off. I'd tried to dismiss it. He's just stressed. I'd told my best friend Sarah over our weekly wine o'clock on my patio. Sales quotas, you know. Sarah, bless her, had just nodded, her eyes lingering on my face a moment too long. But then came the lipstick. A vibrant, almost shocking fuchsia, not my shade at all. I'd found it on the edge of the bathroom sink, nestled between Colton's shaving cream and my everyday nude gloss. I picked it up, a strange prickle of unease spreading through me. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Remy's. Colton had simply shrugged when I asked, mumbling something about one of the kids probably bringing it home from a friend's house. I'd let it go, but the image of that bright pink tube had stayed with me, a tiny, incongruous splash of color in our otherwise predictable life. The camera app had been a desperate, almost impulsive decision after the lipstick incident. I'd told Colton it was for security, a smart home upgrade. He'd barely noticed, too absorbed in his phone. Installing it felt like a betrayal of trust, a violation of the unspoken rules of our marriage. But a part of me, a small, terrified voice, had whispered that I needed to know. I needed proof, one way or another, to silence the growing clamor of doubt in my mind. I never truly expected to find anything. I hoped to confirm my paranoia was unfounded, to laugh at myself for being so silly. But there she was. Shelby Foster, 29, Colton's new energetic secretary, stepping into my home, bag in hand, a knowing smile shared with my husband. The image replayed in my mind, a silent movie of betrayal. My hands trembled as I gripped my phone, the faculty meeting a distant, meaningless hum. The anger was a slow burn, starting in my gut and spreading through my veins. Injustice. That was the word that echoed in my head. Injustice. How could he? After all these years, all we'd built, all the sacrifices. A cold, hard resolve began to form. This wasn't just about a husband and his secretary. This was about my home, my children, my identity. It was about the quiet dignity I'd always carried, the trust I'd placed, the love I'd poured into this family. And now, it felt like it was all being systematically dismantled, piece by piece, by the very people who should have cherished it. As the principal droned on about standardized testing, my mind raced. What were they doing in there? What were they saying? The image of them sharing that conspiratorial look, that intimate moment, burned behind my eyes. It wasn't just physical betrayal I feared. It was the emotional intimacy, the shared secrets, the laughter that should have been mine. A wave of nausea washed over me, a bitter taste in my mouth. I knew, with a terrifying certainty, that this wasn't just a fleeting mistake. This was a pattern, a deliberate act, happening right under my nose, in my own home, while I was out working to support the very life they were now desecrating. The indignation was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, to run home and confront them. But years of teaching, of managing unruly classrooms, of navigating complex family dynamics, had taught me one thing: control. Emotional control was my superpower, and I would need every ounce of it now. A question, sharp and insistent, cut through my panic. What kind of woman allows herself to be discarded so easily? What kind of wife lets her home become a stage for another woman's clandestine visits? The answer, I realized with a chilling clarity, was not me, not Monroe Harrison, not anymore. I would not be the silent victim. I would not be the woman who just cried into her pillow. I would be the woman who saw, who planned, and who acted. And they, Colton and Shelby, would soon learn the true cost of their casual cruelty, the expectation of what was to come, the slow, deliberate unraveling of their deceit, was already taking root in my mind. The faculty meeting finally dragged to a close, a blur of administrative jargon I barely registered. My mind was a whirlwind of images: Shelby's bright smile, Colton's furtive glance, the insulated bag. Each detail was a tiny shard of glass, twisting in an open wound. I managed to nod, offer a polite goodbye to my colleagues, and then, with a speed that felt both urgent and unnervingly calm, I was in my car, driving home. The usual 15-minute commute felt like an eternity, each turn of the wheel bringing me closer to the inevitable confrontation, or perhaps the confirmation of my worst fears. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The cold air of late October seeped into the car, but a different kind of chill had settled deep in my bones. I rehearsed scenarios in my head: the screaming match, the tears, the indignant accusations. But then, a different thought emerged, sharper, more precise. What good would a public spectacle do? It would only give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken, seeing me lose control. No. If there was a performance to be had, I would be the director, the lead actress, and the audience. And they? They would be the unwitting, unprepared players in a drama they hadn't known was being written. I pulled into our driveway, the familiar suburban house looking deceptively innocent under the pale autumn sky. The porch light, still on from the morning, cast a soft glow on the pumpkin decorations Remy and Ellis had insisted on. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. I took a deep breath, forcing a placid expression onto my face, the kind I used when a student tried to argue that Shakespeare was irrelevant. I needed to be Monroe Harrison, the composed, slightly tired, but always in control literature teacher. I unlocked the front door, the click echoing unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. The scent of garlic and herbs hit me immediately. Pasta. They were in the kitchen. My stomach churned, but I pushed down the rising bile. "Colton, kids, I'm home!" I called out, my voice deliberately light, a little too cheerful. The sound of clattering dishes and a sudden hushed murmur came from the kitchen. Perfect. My unexpected return had clearly caught them off guard. I walked into the kitchen, my eyes sweeping over the scene. Colton, looking flustered, was standing by the stove, a wooden spoon still in his hand, a half-eaten plate of pasta on the counter beside him. Shelby, perched casually on one of our kitchen stools, Her bright fuchsia lipstick, a stark contrast to her pale face, was hastily wiping her mouth with a napkin. Her insulated bag, now empty, sat innocently on the floor beside her. A single telltale strand of her long blonde hair was caught on Colton's sweater. My gaze lingered on it for a fraction of a second, a silent accusation. "Monroe, you're home early," Colton stammered, his eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and something else, panic. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, a man who had just been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, except the cookie jar was our marriage. "Yes, darling," I replied, my smile unwavering, a little too sweet. Principal Davies decided to cut the meeting short. Something about a budgetary oversight that could wait until next week. Lucky me, right? I thought I'd surprise you with an early return. My eyes flickered to Shelby, who was now attempting to appear engrossed in the pattern of our kitchen tiles. And Shelby, what a surprise. "Are you joining Colton for lunch?" Shelby's cheeks flushed a deep crimson. "Oh, Mrs. Harrison." "Yes, Mr. Harrison was just helping me with some paperwork from the dealership, and we decided to grab a quick bite. He said you wouldn't be home." Her voice was a little too high, a little too fast, betraying the practiced nonchalance she was trying to project. "Paperwork, of course," I said, my voice dripping with an almost imperceptible layer of sarcasm that only I could hear. "And pasta, my favorite. You know, Colton, you never make pasta for me during the week. It's always a weekend treat." I walked over to the counter, picking up the plate they had been sharing. "Looks delicious." I even took a small, theatrical sniff. The aroma of betrayal had never smelled so Italian. Colton cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. "Well, you know, just a quick lunch." Shelby was just about to head back to the office. "Oh, don't rush on my account, Shelby," I said, turning to her, my smile still fixed. It felt like my face was made of glass, fragile but unyielding. "I'm sure you two had a lot of important business to discuss, and I wouldn't want to interrupt your workflow." The word workflow hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Shelby practically leaped off the stool. No, I really should be going. Thank you for the lunch, Mr. Harrison. It was very productive." She grabbed her bag, her movements jerky, her eyes darting between me and Colton. She avoided my gaze, which was exactly what I wanted. Guilt was a powerful weapon, and she was already wielding it, albeit clumsily. "It was lovely meeting you, Shelby," I said, extending my hand. She flinched slightly before taking it, her palm clammy. "Do stop by again sometime. Perhaps for a proper meal when the kids are home. They'd love to meet Colton's new secretary." My grip was firm, a silent promise of something yet to come. As Shelby practically fled the house, mumbling a hasty goodbye, I turned to Colton. He was still standing by the stove, looking utterly miserable. "Everything all right, darling?" I asked, my voice now softer, almost concerned. "You look a little pale, and you've got a bit of pasta sauce on your chin." I reached out, gently wiping it away with my thumb. His skin felt cold. He stammered, "Yeah, fine, just surprised to see you." "Well, I'm here now," I said, leaning in and giving him a quick kiss on the cheek. It felt like kissing a stranger. "And I have an idea. With Halloween coming up and the kids so excited, why don't we host a big Sunday family lunch? Invite the neighbors, your parents, maybe even some of my colleagues. It's been too long since we had a proper gathering." Colton looked utterly bewildered. A Sunday lunch? Now? Why not?" I pressed, my smile widening. "It'll be fun. A chance to show off our beautiful home, catch up with everyone. And you know what? I think it would be absolutely delightful if Shelby could join us. She's new to the area, isn't she? It would be a wonderful way to welcome her into our community." The words tasted like venom, sweet and potent. Colton's face went from pale to a ghastly shade of green. "Shelby? At a family lunch? Monroe, I don't think that's a good idea. She's just my secretary. It might be awkward." "Awkward?" I chuckled, a light, airy sound that masked the steel in my voice. "Nonsense, darling. She's part of your work family, and we're all about family, aren't we? Besides, Remy and Ellis would love to meet her, and I'm sure my mother-in-law would be absolutely charmed. She always loves meeting your new hires." I gave him a pointed look, a silent challenge. Is there a reason you wouldn't want Shelby to meet your family, Colton? He swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the kitchen as if searching for an escape route. No, of course not. It's just unexpected. Wonderful. I clapped my hands together, the sound sharp and final. Then it's settled. Sunday lunch, I'll send out the invitations. You can tell Shelby personally. Make sure she knows it's a formal invitation from both of us. I watched him, a predator observing its prey, waiting for the trap to spring. He was caught, and he didn't even know it yet. The game had begun. The days leading up to Sunday lunch were a masterclass in psychological warfare, executed with the quiet precision of a seasoned chess player. Colton walked around the house like a ghost, jumpy, distracted, constantly checking his phone. He knew something was coming, but he couldn't quite grasp what. Shelby, I imagined, was equally on edge, caught between the rock of Colton's panic and the hard place of my deceptively warm invitation. I, on the other hand, moved with a newfound clarity, a calm born of absolute conviction. The pain was still a dull ache, a constant reminder of the betrayal, but it no longer paralyzed me. Instead, it fueled a cold, strategic fire. "Mom, can we really have a haunted house theme for the lunch?" Remy asked on Wednesday, her eyes sparkling with 12-year-old enthusiasm. "Of course, sweetie," I replied, stirring a pot of chili for dinner. "We'll make it a pre-Halloween celebration. Spooky decorations, maybe some fun games." The irony wasn't lost on me. Our home was about to become a haunted house, indeed, but the ghosts were very much alive. While Colton fretted, I was busy. My unexpected return on Tuesday had been a calculated risk, a probe to confirm my suspicions. The reaction of both Colton and Shelby had been all the confirmation I needed. Now, it was time to move beyond suspicion and into evidence. I remembered something from years ago, a casual conversation with a colleague whose husband worked in IT. He'd mentioned how easy it was to retrieve deleted files from old hard drives, how digital footprints were never truly erased. It was a seed planted years ago, now ready to bear fruit. That night, after the kids were asleep and Colton was working late in his home office, likely agonizing over Shelby's attendance, I retrieved an old laptop of his from the back of the closet. It was one he'd used for years before upgrading, now relegated to dusty storage. I'd always been tech-savvy enough to handle basic troubleshooting, but this required more. I called my colleague's husband, Mark, under the pretense of needing help with a school project involving data recovery. Mark, a kind, unassuming man, agreed to take a look at it the next day. I felt a pang of guilt for using him, but the stakes were too high. The next morning, I dropped the laptop off at Mark's office. "It's an old one," I explained. "I just need to see if there's anything salvageable on it. Old lesson plans, photos, you know how it is." He nodded, oblivious. I knew Colton had always been careless with his digital life, assuming privacy where there was none. He'd deleted emails, chat logs, maybe even photos, thinking they were gone forever. But I knew better. I was always 10 steps ahead. While Mark worked his digital magic, I focused on the other elements of my plan. The Sunday lunch was not just a social event. It was a stage. I called my mother-in-law, Eleanor, a woman known for her sharp wit and even sharper judgment. "Eleanor, darling, it's Monroe. I'm planning a big family lunch this Sunday, a pre-Halloween celebration. We'd absolutely love for you and Dad to come. And you know what? Colton's new secretary, Shelby, will be joining us. She's new to Boise, and I thought it would be lovely to welcome her." Eleanor paused, a beat of silence on the line. "Shelby? Colton's secretary? How interesting, Monroe. I didn't realize his work relationships extended to family lunches." Her tone was perfectly polite, but I could hear the wheels turning in her mind. Eleanor had always been fiercely protective of Colton, but also fiercely loyal to the idea of family integrity. She valued appearances, and an unattached young secretary at a family gathering would certainly raise an eyebrow. "Oh, you know Colton," I said, feigning a light-hearted sigh. "Always so inclusive. He insisted she come. I thought it was sweet, really. I planted the seed, then let it germinate." Eleanor would observe, she would question, and she would judge. Her presence was crucial. I also made sure to invite Sarah, my best friend, and her husband. Sarah knew me better than anyone, and she had seen the subtle shifts in Colton's behavior. She would be my silent ally, my emotional anchor, and a witness to the unfolding drama. On Friday, Mark called. "Monroe, you won't believe what I found on this old drive," he said, his voice a mix of surprise and concern. "It's a treasure trove of, well, let's just say some very personal communications. Looks like someone forgot to properly wipe their data." He didn't need to elaborate. I knew exactly what he meant. "I've put everything on a secure drive for you. Just let me know when you can pick it up." A cold wave of vindication washed over me. I had the proof. Not just the lipstick or the camera footage, but the undeniable digital evidence of Colton's deceit. Chat logs, emails, even a few photos, all meticulously recovered. He hadn't just been having lunch with Shelby. He'd been building a secret life, piece by digital piece. The depth of the betrayal hit me anew, a fresh stab of pain, but it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of grim determination. I had given everything to them, my time, my energy, my unwavering loyalty, and they had discarded me like nothing. Now they would learn the true meaning of being discarded. That evening, I picked up the drive from Mark, thanking him profusely. Back home, locked in my study, I began to sift through the files. The words on the screen blurred, then sharpened into agonizing clarity. Pet names, inside jokes, plans for secret rendezvous, complaints about my nagging, about our boring life. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just physical infidelity. It was an emotional affair, a complete disregard for our shared history, our children, our vows. He had belittled me to her, painted me as the villain in his narrative. The humiliation was a bitter taste in my mouth, but it solidified my resolve. I found a particularly damning email. It was from Colton to Shelby, dated just a few weeks prior, discussing a potential promotion at the dealership. He mentioned how he needed to play his cards right with the district manager, Mr. Henderson, and how Shelby's enthusiasm could be an asset. He even hinted at using a specific, sensitive piece of information about a competitor that Shelby had access to through her previous job, suggesting it could give them an edge. It wasn't just about an affair. It was about professional misconduct, potentially even corporate espionage, all wrapped up in a package of personal betrayal. This wasn't just a husband cheating. This was a man risking his career, and potentially our financial stability, for a cheap thrill. A new layer of understanding settled over me. This wasn't just about my pain. It was about protecting my children, ensuring their future wasn't jeopardized by Colton's reckless actions. My resolve hardened into a diamond-like clarity. I would not just expose him. I would dismantle his carefully constructed facade piece by piece, ensuring he faced the full consequences of his choices. The next day, Saturday, was a whirlwind of preparing for the lunch. I baked, I cleaned, I decorated. The house was filled with the scents of cinnamon and pumpkin, a deceptive veneer of domestic bliss. Colton, still visibly anxious, tried to help, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept glancing at me, as if trying to decipher my serene expression. He saw the wife he thought he knew, the one who would probably forgive him, eventually. He had no idea he was looking at a woman who was already 10 steps ahead, holding all the cards, ready to play her winning hand. I had a plan. A precise, devastating plan that would unfold tomorrow during our pre-Halloween family lunch. Shelby would be there. Colton's parents would be there. Sarah would be there. And I would ensure that every single person present would witness the truth. The anticipation was a thrilling, terrifying current running through me. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming my dignity, and about showing them all that Monroe Harrison was not a woman to be discarded. Sunday dawned with a pale autumn sun, but the atmosphere inside our home was anything but bright. The dining table was impeccably set, adorned with pumpkins and dried leaves, a scene that screamed happy family to anyone who didn't know the truth. The aromas of roasted turkey and apple pie filled the air. But for me, The predominant scent was that of anticipation. Colton was a wreck, pale and sweating, forcing smiles that didn't reach his eyes. Shelby, who arrived punctually, looked even worse. She wore a floral dress that seemed chosen to appear innocent, but her eyes were wide, and she avoided my gaze at all costs, as if I were a ghost. The guests began to arrive. My parents, Colton's parents, Eleanor and Richard, along with Sarah and David. Eleanor, with her elegant posture and penetrating gaze, greeted everyone with her usual grace, but I caught her observing Shelby with an almost palpable curiosity. "So this is the famous Shelby," she murmured to Richard, a comment that didn't escape my notice. Sarah, my best friend, gave me a tight hug, and I felt the silent strength of her support. She knew something was about to happen. The sparkle in my eyes and the calm in my voice were clear signals to her. Lunch began with a false sense of normalcy. Pleasant conversations about the weather, the kids' school, Halloween plans. I moved around the room with a serenity that bordered on coldness, ensuring everyone had what they needed, paying attention to every nuance. Colton tried to appear like an attentive host, but his voice was tense, and he fumbled a glass of water, making it jump with a start. Shelby barely touched her food, picking at her plate with her fork. With every laugh or comment, she visibly flinched. The tension was almost palpable, a stretched thread about to snap. When dessert was served, I stood up, tapping lightly on my glass with a spoon. "Excuse me, everyone. Before we cut Remy's pie, I wanted to share something. You know how much I value family, the memories we've built together. And thinking about that, I've prepared a small photo presentation of our family, of our most precious moments. I thought it would be a lovely way to celebrate all of us, especially with Halloween approaching and the kids growing up so fast." A projector I had discreetly set up in the living room, connected to my laptop, turned on. The lights were dimmed, and the first image appeared on the wall. A wedding photo of Colton and me, smiling, full of hope. It was followed by photos of Remy's and Ellis's births, birthdays, vacations. The room was filled with affectionate murmurs, nostalgic laughter. Colton seemed to relax a little, perhaps thinking I was just putting on a perfect wife display to cover up the truth. He couldn't have been more wrong. I narrated each photo in a soft voice, full of affection, but inside, my heart beat to a relentless rhythm. Here's Remy, on her first day of school, and here's Ellis, so proud of his soccer trophy. I went through a few more photos until, with an almost inaudible click, the image on the screen changed drastically. The screen now displayed a series of screenshots. These were not family photos. These were text conversations, messages between Colton and Shelby. The room fell into a deathly silence. The first messages were innocent, about work, but quickly became more intimate. Pet names, inside jokes, plans for work lunches that lasted hours, meetings that extended into the night. With each new image, a new piece of the truth was revealed. I heard a small gasp from Shelby. Colton was as white as a sheet, his eyes fixed on the screen, his mouth agape in an O of shock and horror. Eleanor, sitting next to him, put her hand over her mouth, her eyes darting between the screen and her son. Then, I clicked again. An email image appeared. It was an email from Colton to Shelby, with the subject line, "Regarding Henderson and the opportunity." The email detailed how he planned to use confidential information about a competitor company, which Shelby had obtained from her previous job, to impress Mr. Henderson, the district manager, and secure a promotion. He even hinted at a plan to discard some colleagues he considered obstacles. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Richard, Colton's father, a businessman with an impeccable reputation, stood up abruptly. "Colton, what is this?" I raised my hand, asking for silence. My voice now was clear and firm, devoid of any emotion. This email, dated 3 weeks ago, details a plan to use confidential information from a competitor company, illegally obtained through Ms. Shelby, for Colton's personal and professional benefit. This is not just unethical, it's illegal. And, as you can see in the final line of the email, he also planned to use Ms. Shelby to help manage the consequences, should anything go wrong. Shelby let out a strangled sound. slumping from her chair. She was in tears, trying to hide. Colton, meanwhile, tried to compose himself. "Monroe, what are you doing? This is slander. This is all false." I smiled. A cold, joyless smile. "False, Colton? I recovered this email and all these messages from your old laptop, the one you thought you had wiped clean, the one you asked me to store in the closet, the one I took to a data recovery specialist. Every word, every image is real. And so there's no doubt about the seriousness of the situation. I've already sent a copy of this email, along with the evidence of your communications with Ms. Shelby, to Mr. Henderson, your company's district manager. He should have received it about an hour ago." The revelation hit Colton like a lightning bolt. His eyes widened, and he lost all color. You did what?" He tried to stand, but his legs gave out, and he fell back into the chair, his face contorted in despair. Shelby was sobbing uncontrollably on the floor. Eleanor, who had been in shock until then, looked at her son with an expression of utter revulsion. "Colton, how could you? Not just to your wife, to your family, but to your career? To the reputation your father built?" I continued, my voice cutting through the heavy silence. "Colton not only betrayed me, but he put our family at financial and legal risk with his reckless actions. He discarded me, made me feel invisible, while building a secret life with Ms. Shelby, using her for his own selfish ends." Sarah came closer to me, placing her hand on my back in a gesture of support. "Monroe, you are not alone." Colton tried to speak, but the words tangled in his mouth. "Monroe, please, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain, Colton," I said, my voice now tinged with an unshakable authority. "The evidence speaks for itself. I gave everything to you, to this family, and you threw me away as if I were nothing. But I am not nothing. I am Monroe Harrison, and I will not be silenced nor humiliated. I will not be the victim." I looked at him, at Shelby, at the room full of shocked faces. "This house, this life we built, will no longer be a stage for your betrayal. As of today, things change." The final surprise came from Eleanor. She stood up, walked over to me, and, to everyone's shock, embraced me. "Monroe, I am so sorry. I didn't know. You have all my support." She turned to Colton, her eyes filled with a silent fury. "Colton, you are not the man I raised. You have a lot to answer for, not just to Monroe, but to yourself." The family dynamic had changed forever. The power was no longer in Colton's hands, nor in his web of lies. It was in mine. I had reclaimed my space, my control, and, most importantly, my self-respect. The fall of the guilty had begun, and I was just beginning to witness the dawn of my own freedom. The silence that followed Eleanor's embrace was profound, heavy with unspoken truths and shattered illusions. Colton sat slumped, a defeated man, while Shelby continued to sob on the floor, her floral dress now a crumpled mess. My parents, who had watched the entire scene unfold with a mixture of horror and dawning understanding, finally approached me. My mother, usually so reserved, hugged me tightly, her eyes moist. "Monroe, my brave girl," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. My father, surprisingly, just nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the strength he'd always overlooked in me. The initial shock had given way to a quiet, almost reverent respect. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of hushed conversations and hasty departures. Colton's parents, Eleanor and Richard, stayed longer, speaking in low tones with him in the kitchen. I didn't hear the details, but the sternness in Richard's voice and the occasional choked sob from Colton told me enough. When they finally left, Eleanor gave me another hug, a much firmer one this time. "Monroe, you did what was right. It wasn't easy, but it was right. We'll be in touch." Her words were a balm, a confirmation that I wasn't alone, that some bonds, even when tested by betrayal, could be reforged. Shelby, after her initial breakdown, was quietly escorted out by her own sister, who had arrived after a frantic call. Her face was swollen, her eyes red, but there was a flicker of something else there. Not quite remorse, but perhaps the dawning realization of the magnitude of her own misjudgment. I watched her go, feeling no triumph, just a profound weariness. The satisfaction of justice was not a burst of fireworks, but a quiet settling, like dust after a storm. In the days and weeks that followed, the consequences unfolded with a chilling precision. Colton was immediately suspended from his job, pending an internal investigation. The email I sent to Mr. Henderson, combined with the evidence of his unethical conduct and the misuse of confidential information, was undeniable. The company launched a full review, and within a month, Colton was fired. Not only that, but the competitor company, alerted by the internal investigation, initiated legal proceedings against him for corporate espionage. His career, once so promising, was in tatters. The financial repercussions were immediate and severe. Shelby also faced her own reckoning. The information she provided to Colton was traced back to her previous employer, leading to a lawsuit against her for breach of contract and intellectual property theft. Her reputation in the industry was ruined, and she struggled to find any meaningful employment. The opportunity Colton had promised her had turned into a nightmare. For me, the path was different. The divorce proceedings were initiated swiftly. With the overwhelming evidence of Colton's infidelity and financial misconduct, the settlement was surprisingly straightforward. I kept the house, ensuring stability for Remy and Ellis. The children, though confused and saddened by their father's absence, were resilient. I made sure to be honest with them, in an age-appropriate way, explaining that sometimes adults make very bad choices, and that those choices have consequences. I emphasized that their father's actions had nothing to do with their worth or my love for them. My emotional balance shifted. The constant knot of anxiety in my stomach began to loosen. The feeling of being invisible, of being discarded, slowly faded, replaced by a quiet strength. There were still moments of profound sadness, especially when I saw a family photo or remembered a happy memory that was now tainted. Grief, I learned, isn't linear. It comes in waves, even when you're the one who sought justice. But beneath the sadness, there was a bedrock of peace. I had faced my greatest fear, the complete unraveling of my life, and I had not only survived but had rebuilt it, stronger and truer. I started investing more in myself. I picked up my old hobby of painting, finding solace in the colors and textures. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, and their unwavering support was a constant source of comfort. Sarah was a rock, always there to listen, to celebrate small victories, and to remind me of my own resilience. I even started taking a few business courses online, exploring the possibility of starting my own small venture, something I'd always dreamed of but had put aside for Colton's career. My relationship with my parents also underwent a profound change. My mother became my confidant, and my father, though still a man of few words, showed his support in quiet ways, like fixing a leaky faucet or offering to help with yard work. They saw me, truly saw me, for the first time in a long time. Colton tried to appeal to my pity, sending sporadic, desperate messages. He claimed remorse, begged for forgiveness, but his words rang hollow. I had learned to distinguish genuine regret from self-pity. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The bridge was burned, not out of malice, but out of a necessary act of self-preservation. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges. Single parenthood was tough, and the scars of betrayal remained. But they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders of how far I had come, of the fire I had walked through. I learned that true strength isn't about never falling, but about rising every single time, even when you feel shattered. It's about finding your voice when you've been silenced, and reclaiming your narrative when others have tried to write it for you. Looking back, I realized that the greatest betrayal wasn't just Colton's infidelity, but the way I had allowed myself to shrink, to become defined by his expectations and the family's silent judgments. The justice I sought wasn't just about making him pay, it was about reclaiming myself. It was about proving to myself that I was not invisible, not discardable, and certainly not a victim. And as I sat on my porch, watching Remy and Ellis laugh as they chased fireflies in the twilight, A profound sense of calm settled over me. The air was cool, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine. My heart felt lighter than it had in years. I had lost a marriage, but I had found myself. Sometimes, the greatest freedom comes from letting go of what you thought you needed, to embrace what you truly are.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.